Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. Sorry for a little bit of a tardy start there, as this is our very first episode here of the Talented webinar series. As you can imagine, we had a little bit of a technical challenge there, but thank you to everyone who got us through. And thank you for everyone for waiting so patiently for us. My name is Spencer Greenwood. I'm with Acara Solutions, who's powering this. And I'm really excited about this event and to introduce our guest. Our guest is with President's Choice Financial. He's been with President's Choice Financial since 2017, and he was brought there to help build the landscape and the talent strategy for President's Choice Financial. Currently, he leads a team of 13 and is serving as the Senior Manager of Talent Acquisition for a company that employs over 200,000 people. The team that our guest leads supports all functions of business and recruitment. And for the past 12 years, he's a subject matter expert in talent acquisition and strategy. Prior to this, our guest's first job was serving coffee at Tim Hortons, but they slowly built up their talent acquisition knowledge through working with companies like Mosaic and Loblaws. Our guest is a widely recognized leader, not only in the talent acquisition space, but also in the LGBTQ plus community as a leader of the Proud to Be pillar at the PC Financial Group. I'd like to introduce our guest, Michael De Guzman. He shares a passion with me for dogs, teamwork, and diversity, and today we're sharing a conversation. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Spencer. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. No problem. Thanks for coming. Happy to have you here. I know you and I have shared quite a few lengthy conversations, and in one of them, I know some new developments in your life. You're a dog dad. Just about 3 days ago, you got a puppy.
Yes, he's very playful today, but he's on my foot, so hopefully he's not barking or anything.
Hopefully. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. And you've had a very, very interesting journey throughout this pandemic in talent acquisition, and I know you've hired 17,000 people up until this point. But I want to take it back just a little bit. I want to go back to January 1st. 2020. So it's the beginning of a new decade. Everyone's a little bit excited. What was your thoughts? What was your team's goals at that point? How were you feeling?
Yeah, I think, we always do this exercise where, at the beginning of the year, we review our business priorities, but also from an HR perspective, we look at, all of our objectives. And I think, it's a very exciting time for everybody, in a new decade, and everyone's really empowered and excited. So, when we look at our strategy for the year, it's really about strengthening our footprint in the talent acquisition space. Also strengthening our campus, relationships. So there's a lot of exciting stuff that we actually wanted to build and create. And I'm really, big on candidate experience. So that was, for sure a main focal point for me as well for the year. But again, entering the new decade, it's very, very exciting for everybody.
Yes, as I can imagine, for us too. It was 2020, new decade, green grass, blue skies, anything, sky's the limit. And then around March 16th, we get hit with this curveball. And it was the big announcement from Ford and Trudeau that essential businesses can remain open, but all the rest need to close. Around what time did you realize that this was going to impact your business?
Yeah, so it's crazy because, when all of that happened, a lot of people didn't know what to do and didn't know what to expect. So right. I remember getting a phone call around that week, and it was really about, we need to come together as an organization to recruit for our stores, because part of our mandate is really, how do we support our stores so that they service, the Canadians? And it's really our culture, blue culture, and it's about, live life well and empowering and enabling our Canadians. So it was really, putting everything aside, all of our priorities, and making sure that we just, focus on supporting our front line.
So take it just back a little bit. At PC Financial, your team typically, what type of skill sets and roles are you typically recruiting for?
So for PC Financial, we do have our base business, so that supports all of our corporate functions. But also we have our stores where we have the pavilions where, you go into a store, there is that PC Financial pavilion that we recruit for as well across the country. And also we have the mobile shop, our telecommunications division, where we also recruit for what we call the mobile list. So we have, stores, and also we have the corporate side of the business as well.
And then on that corporate side, I guess it's the finance roles, the tech roles, and embodied in those.
Exactly.
That would be your wheelhouse. Okay, awesome. And now all of a sudden, March 17th, you've got this call, and it's basically Loblaws, the parent company, saying you need to centralize all the recruitment of all their subsidiaries, and you need to centralize recruitment for everywhere in the brand.
Yeah. So we look. Exactly. We look at all our stores, right? We have the Loblaw stores, we have the franchise stores, we have the, Shoppers Drug Mart banner also in Quebec. And essentially, people are going into the stores buying essential, needs, right? Yeah. And our stores are saying, we need more people, we need more manpower to really support Canadians when they do their, grocery shopping. So we didn't know what the volume looks like. We didn't know what to expect. But what we know is that we have an HR community that will come together to really support in terms of hiring and providing the manpower for our stores.
Excellent. Yeah, and I know this is probably around the time where toilet paper was running out everywhere around the world. So you guys knew that, you guys knew you were about to get busy. So what did you do? What were some of the steps in terms of centralizing the recruitment? How did you receive orders from the stores? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so what we've done is we have a centralized inbox. That centralized inbox will flow through all of the requests from the stores across the country. So that was number one, because we wanted a place where they can actually put in their request. And again, we didn't know what the volume would be. But in terms, and aside of that, we had a team that I said to you earlier, where the HR community is coming together to really support the hiring, and we had to create roles for each and every group. So when you think about 200 people coming together, how do you maximize and optimize everybody's roles within this task force? So that's from the team perspective. And then also there's a systems perspective. We want to make sure that we are enabled where, Workday is functioning the way we want it to function because of the magnitude and size of the task force. So it's really about looking at the operations, looking at, the process, and looking at, systems to make sure that everything is working fine.
Okay, awesome. And tell me about the first day of this going live. What was the goal? How many hires did you know were ahead of you, and how did that come about?
So the first day that we actually turned the green light on for our inbox, we had 500 requests.
500 on day one.
500 requests on day one. So that's when we looked at it and said, okay, this is going to be big. This is something that we really need to come together, and the stores really need us, right? Yeah. So it was really hard to even forecast because you don't know what to expect. But when we saw the 500, we knew it was going to be a lot in the next coming weeks and even months. Right.
So typically your team at PC Financial, what would you say your yearly target is, or what were you on track for in terms of hires for the year?
Yeah, so with PC Financial, I would say even for this year, it's really just supporting our stores from the PC Financial Pavilions, and also the mobile shop. So I would say typically, our hires for the stores are about 100, 200, and that's also including, our corporate functions as well. But, never in our wildest dreams, not just, for PC Financial, but also for Loblaw and Shoppers, that we'll be recruiting 17,000 people.
Right. Yeah. And after day one, it's 500. And I understand that after a month, you guys had forecasted this is going to be 17,000 people that we're hiring in the next couple of months. So to take Michael from leading a team of people that are used to filling some storefront roles, but also technical and professional roles, and to now say, you're going to go from hiring 200 people this year to 17,000 people over the next 3 months. How did your team feel? How that must have been a big task.
It is a big task. And I think, Obviously, when we think about the task force, there's obviously the recruiters that are very comfortable with recruiting, but there's also people that are, from learning and development, from compensation, from health and safety that have never recruited before. So there's a lot of confusion at first. I think it's more, when I talked about the process in the beginning, it's about the, providing the role clarity for people. So there were the sourcers, there's the onboarders, and we have people that are, focusing on background checks. So, if you don't have that background, you're sitting there and you're like, okay, well, what kind of training do I need to do? How can I, be efficient and effective in what I do, right? So there's a lot of confusion, but I think, and I know we'll get to it later, but it's how do you enable your team and how do you train them is key.
Yeah, and I think it's really important too to highlight the fact that you had, the VPs of HRs and you had the people in compensation feet on the ground recruiting and speaking with candidates. And I think that's really important. That shows the community and how the team really came together and,
Right.
and embodied new roles, right? And I think that's amazing. So now that you have this new crazy infinite number after day one, okay, and everyone's kind of gotten their places, or before that, what needs to happen for this to be successful within the organization? What other movements, and I guess who needs to know what?
Yeah, I think it's really about clear communication, right? Clear communication coming from the leaders as to why we're doing it and what we're doing. And also for, I do have partners. So I do have the operations partner and I have, business change partner and a program manager to really help build this landscape and this framework so that people will understand the rules, people will know what to do, and people will be effective in what they do. So I think, taking a step back, it's really just clear communication, clear messaging so that people understand, and also a plan to train, a plan to enable, so people know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of people movement, but what about processes? What types of processes needed to change for you to be able to expedite the time it takes for you to reach these targets? Because 17,000 in 3 months is not what your operations team
Right.
is used to processing. So from interviews to sourcing to you name it.
Yeah, so we do have, basically we split it up where, for Ontario East and West and in Quebec, we do have, a team of sourcers, we have a team of onboarders, and then we have people that are, focusing on background checks. So behind the scenes, we have people that really enabled us and they're really fantastic at, at what they do. The team that, the HR technology really enabled us so that Workday is functioning the way we need it to function. And also, we have, partners within social media where, we need to make sure that we advertise the jobs, for remote areas, right? So do partner with a lot of people and, making sure that we have all of the support that we need to be able to run this engine.
Awesome. And what were the targets of the social media campaign? What platforms were you using?
So we're doing, so we did LinkedIn. And Indeed is a strong partner as well. But we also did, advertising into stores. We did referrals, and then we also did, the huddles. When they do their huddles in the stores, they make sure that, they mention the job and, any referrals as well within their networks.
Wow. So it's a lot of coming together, and it's a lot of moving pieces in this that need to play their part. And you're one of those. So as a leader, what was your approach? I mean, this could be one of the most scariest and uncertain times of people's lives on your team.
Right.
How did you approach leading them through that time when they're also being demanded for the highest amount of targets that they've ever faced?
Yeah, I think it's not so much about KPIs and performance at this time. It was really about how do I make sure that they understand why we're doing this. It's not about you, it's about helping others, right? And I think, we have our daily huddle calls where we make sure, early in the morning, we set the tone of the day. We tackle, what is our goal for today? How do we communicate things? How do we train things or people? And then for me, how do I engage them and how do I, make sure that they feel okay, right? And I think it's really important for me to ask the question, are you okay? Are you feeling good? Is there anything I need to do? Is there anything that I need, you need from me as a support? Because especially at this time, they're not just going through demands of, hiring, people for the stores, but they're also going through pandemic. So it's really understanding and having that compassion and empathy to make sure that, you care about your team is number one.
Absolutely. And what you said there is that it's not about KPIs. And this really gets into the message of what we're talking today, which is how you drove your team to succeed through using purpose and tapping into their purpose. But it's not about KPIs. KPIs is the what, interviews, sourcing, hires, submittals, that's the what. But now you have transitioned your team to focus on the why. And they're tapping into the fact that they are putting bodies into the stores. And those stores are feeding families through a pandemic. Is that what you saw that really worked?
Absolutely. I think the more you explain to people the why and not focus on the what, it gives them a sense of purpose. The reason why I'm doing this is because it's helping the stores, it's helping Canadians, and it's helping, people like me, right? And I think when you provide that clarity and insight to people, it gives them a sense of wow, like this is bigger than me. This is bigger than what I do, right? It forces that feeling of I gotta do this because it's not just for me, it's for everybody, right? So it's not so much about the what, it's about the why.
So I'm not just doing this for my quarterly review. I'm doing this for the end receiver of our organization, right? And the products that they need, and I think that's awesome. So during this process, did you and your team find yourself resorting to any new methods or anything that you hadn't done before that you're now trying?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that worked, and then there's a lot of things that didn't work. And I think what came out of this pandemic and coming together with this task force is making sure that you take all the learnings out of this situation and making sure now that possibilities are endless, right? Like you can blue sky, you can think of creative things, and you can just try it out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right? So I think in terms of process, there's a lot of things that worked for us. There's a lot of things that didn't work, but we were able to pivot quickly. And what I really appreciate about us coming together is the agility. People have really demonstrated being agile and being open to change. Accommodating change, because that's something that really needed to happen to make this work.
Right, and I know you and I we spoke before, and one of the messages that you gave, and I think is really important, is that a method that you used was just to try. Right. And not to be scared of failing. And there were a lot of things that you tried and didn't fail. And talk about how you approach those conversations with your team to keep them engaged. Because I know it's hard when you're trying new things, it's not working, you're trying.
Exactly. And we did a lot of process changes, right? Because we've never done this before. And some things didn't work, some things worked. And when things don't go the way you expect them to work, all you have to do is to be honest, right? So I get on a call, we do a training session, and you open it up and just being honest and being authentic to say, I know we tried this out, it didn't work. I know it's frustrating. We have something new, but here's what we need to do now, right? Here's what we need to try. Here's what we need to make sure that we at least give it a try to see if it works. And I think people do appreciate that because they know and they hear that, okay, so it didn't work. We recognize it didn't work, but we're going to try it again, right? And when you do make it work, there's a sense of collective reward, right? To say, wow, like we all kind of did it together, right? So it's just being really authentic and being honest that, things don't go the way it works sometimes.
And I think that's great because it shows, in leadership, almost a little bit of vulnerability that allows the team to step in and take more ownership. And I know in previous conversations, we spoke about how your team kind of embodied more ownership throughout this whole pandemic, where they saw this business and they saw themselves have almost more involvement than they did prior. And just like you said, if you're giving directives and we're trying things and failing and then trying things that work, I guess that does make everyone feel like they were part of the solution. So I do like that approach. It's awesome. And so of this, I mean, the purpose is something we want to tap into, but when the pandemic is over, the storefronts won't be as busy. We're going to go back to hiring for those corporate roles. How do you keep the purpose fresh within your team, or how do we take away from this lesson and make sure that we're carrying it forward?
Yeah, I think it's really, again, focusing on the why. Every time there's a project, every time there's a task that, you're going to do or your team is asking you to do, it's always good to ask, why are we doing it, right? Like, why is this important? And it's also helping you with prioritization, right? When you list all of your objectives, right? When you think of the why and you look at all of your objectives, you can then look at them and say, okay, so this is really important because, of this, right? So having those conversations, I think is key, is understanding, the what and the why. And then secondly, I think coming out of this pandemic, the relationships, coming together, we all came together, all of the HR, community came together. So, collaborative, engagement, all of that, I think is a great takeaway, coming out of this pandemic. I know it's an unfortunate situation, but, we always have to look at the positive. And I think, the relationships that were built out of this situation is definitely, a key takeaway.
Yeah, and it is a pandemic, and it is definitely a sad situation. But there are takeaways, and the why and the purpose, I think, just from speaking with you this past week, I've learned that it is something that's emerging. And I know myself, I used to get a call from friends to go somewhere and I'd hop in the car and go. But now when I get a call to say you want to go somewhere, I say why, right? Yeah. And we're all asking ourselves this why. And now everything that we do, it has to have purpose. There has to be a reason behind that. And I think coming out of this pandemic, that's going to stick. And I think that your team is well ahead of the race now, and you guys are going to be doing great. So what's next for you and your team? What's coming out of this pandemic look like now? Are you getting back to normal? Is there a normal? What's going on?
Yeah, I think, what enabled us to do with this situation is, to my point earlier, where it forced us to be creative. It forced us to even, blue sky ideas, right? And to think, okay, so before we're like, oh, can we do that? And sometimes you're like, oh, it's probably going to take like 3 months or 4 months, right? But now, you think of an idea and you instantly think, okay, it's a great idea. Why don't we just do it? Why can't we make it happen, right? So I think it forces you to be outside of your comfort zone, to think big, and also to find purpose in everything that you do. Because once you do have that purpose, I think, everything will mean much more, and people will see that authenticity, and people will just gravitate towards, you or the project or whatever you're doing.
Absolutely. No, that's great. It's great to hear from you from that perspective, and I know as a leader that you went through probably some challenging times during this pandemic as well. And I think it's important for other leaders on this call to hear as well. But you did share with me that for the first few weeks, you're only sleeping like a couple hours a night. What did you learn from that period about yourself?
Yeah, I think what I learned about that whole situation or experience is putting yourself first, right? I think making sure that you're mentally healthy, your mental health is number one. You're ready. You are positive. Because I think for you to be able to lead a team through a crisis, you have to make sure that you are, okay, right? And you take care of yourself. I think that's first and foremost. And there's a lot of available resources, your company, our company as well provides, and making sure that you talk, right? You speak, you voice your feelings. You're open about what you are going through. I think this experience just showed all of us that, this what we're going through is real, right? And there's the work life, there's work-life balance, but also you're just putting yourself first. And what I also appreciate is I do have strong leaders that I look up to. I have mentors that I talk to on a not daily basis, but weekly basis, at this point. And it just really helps me focus or refocus if I'm feeling like I'm kind of losing sight of things. And so I think, taking care of yourself, making sure that you tap onto your resources that you have. It could be, work resources, or it could be your mentors or your coaches, is really, really important.
And I think what I hope that everyone takes away from this is that, this is what you and your team did to face this real life pandemic where you had to hire 17,000 people. And purpose is what got you through, and tapping into that personal level of why are we doing this. Now, what I hope people on the call can take away from this is, whatever pandemic, business pandemic, day-to-day pandemic that you're facing as a team, you might just land a big project that gets you, these needs to bring in new people, new talent. Just tap into purpose. It doesn't need to be a pandemic this big, but if purpose got you through this, then understanding the why can definitely motivate your team to get through almost anything.
Right.
Awesome. No, I really appreciate it. I think you've really hit the nail on the head on how to tap into that and how it drives you. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate everyone who's joined us for this call. And I look forward to future episodes and future conversations with you too, as Michael.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
No problem. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.